what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Behind the Reel podcast. This is episode number 62, and we've got Mr. Jason Flesher on the show tonight, and he is a trophy bass hunter. That is a term that we are going to revisit throughout the night. What is a trophy bass hunter, and what does it mean to Jason? So I think that is something that we would all strive to consider ourselves, right? Or at least a lot of the swim bait guys would strive to call themselves or would love to be referred to as a trophy bass hunter. What does it take? What does it mean? The ups, the downs, all the in-betweens. We're going to get to that here in just a minute. I do want to mention for all of you guys that are shuffling in here, make sure you comment over in the live comment section. That is how you're going to be entered into the giveaway tonight. So Jason works with some awesome companies. One of those being Slay Baits. They are going to be donating a glide bait tonight, and one of you lucky listeners is going to be able to actually throw one of those baits, and I believe you're even going to get to pick out the pattern in which it is painted. So shout out to those guys. Make sure you check them out over on Facebook. They've got some baits. I think they're getting ready to do a drop on. So F5 also is another company that Jason has formed a relationship with, and they are giving out a nice little prize pack that includes a rod. It's a ghost code. They're going to give you a rod sleeve, a bait wrap, and a hat. So you're going to get all of that. So we're going to have two winners tonight. One of you guys is going to be winning the F5 pack, and one of you will be winning the Slay Baits pack. And in order to get entered into the drawing, go ahead, put your comment over there. I can see a couple of you guys already, so appreciate you. We got Bo in the comment section. We're going to enter him into the giveaway, and we'll draw that at the end of the show. So make sure you stay tuned. But we're going to go ahead and bring Jason on. And if you guys would do me a favor, share the link to this video with some of your friends. Share it if you have a fishing group on Facebook or something like that. Share it around. That way we can get some more listeners, and we can introduce more people to not only to Jason and to the podcast, but also to these awesome sponsors that are willing to put up these cool prizes. So you're going to be helping your buddies out by sharing this, because they're going to have an opportunity to win some cool stuff. But you'll be helping these sponsors out as well. So they're throwing some money on the table for this show here tonight. So that's really awesome to see. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring him on the line. Guys, keep those comments coming in, and we will get to those questions and try to stay as engaged as possible tonight. Although we get to chatting and we get to talking fishing, and sometimes we just go down the rabbit hole. So that's inevitable, but we will try to stay on track as best we can. What's up, man?
What do you say about it, John?
How you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. So a lot of these guys are going to already know who you are. You've got a lot of support, it looks like, in the swim bait community. But if you would like to just introduce yourself for those people that may be meeting you for the first time tonight, just a little background about yourself, how you got into fishing, and kind of how you got to be where you're at today.
Name's Jason Flesher. A lot of people know me as Jay Flesh. Been bass fishing pretty much my whole life since I was 9-10 years old. Started out throwing plastic worms with my dad, fishing farm ponds, a few small lakes around where I live here in rural West Tennessee, and fished, like I said, pretty much my whole life. But catching big bass was something that was kind of a rarity to me, something that I felt like was luck, I guess, putting your bait in the right place. And there is some luck involved in it to some degree sometimes. But I started to figure out about 4 or 5 years ago, I was really doing a deep dive. I'd kind of gotten away from bass fishing. I was raising 2 sons, and they both played travel baseball, and that ate up a lot of time, and I enjoyed that. But when they were getting ready to get out of the house and on their own, I told my wife, I got to find something to do. I'm going to go crazy. You know, we've been living at ball fields, and I had some things going in the music industry, working with some bands and stuff, and kind of got burned out on that. I just thought, well, I got to find something to do. And I'd always enjoyed bass fishing. So I started working at a new job, and there were some guys there who were telling me they were kayak fishing and they just got into it. We're trying to learn. And I said, well, you know, I've got some experience with bass fishing. And I said, why don't you go out with us sometime? So I borrowed one of them's kayak. We went out. We were just throwing conventional tackle, and one of the guys David was asking me, you know, a lot of questions and stuff, and he was really intent to learn. And like I said, I had a pretty decent history with bass fishing, but there was just a lot of questions that I didn't know the answer to, and I had a lot of time on my hands, and I did a deep dive and just, you know, went down the rabbit hole and started digging and seeing these guys who had caught hundreds of double digits, and it made me realize, you know, that sometimes this can be more than luck. These guys know something I don't know, and I want to know what it is, you know. So like I said, just went on a deep dive and started reading books and watching anything that I could find by guys who were known trophy bass guys, interviews, you name it. Went through it, took note. And then in late 2018, a local friend of mine here sent me a video link to the YouTube video from Mike Gilbert's Working Class 017 video.
Yeah.
And it was over from there. I mean, I was online buying swim baits and did a deep dive on all the swim bait guys, you know, Butch Brown, Mike Gilbert, Don Mormon, who's now a really close friend of mine, has been a mentor to me. Just went down that whole rabbit hole, and here we are, you know.
Yeah. Before I forget, I wrote this down because I want to know, do you have a recommendation on a book, something that somebody can go pick up and read?
I actually do. There's several good books. I've read several. Bill Seamantel's Big Bass Zone, and let's see, there's Sal Belly. It's a good book. It's not so much educational; it's more historical. But there's some things that could be learned from it. And but this book right here, this book changed the game for me. This is In Pursuit of Giant Bass by Bill Murphy. I've read this book cover to cover twice. I've got a notebook and a half full of notes from this book. And it's really what kind of helped me change my mentality from a bass fisherman to a trophy bass fisherman.
Sure.
And to be clear, trophy bass fisherman sounds really glamorous, but it's not all rainbows and puppy dogs. And it's,
yeah,
when I use that term, I don't mean that I'm farther along in the game than the next guy. It just means that I'm going to spend my time targeting those areas that hold trophy bass with baits that I feel give me the best odds of catching those trophy bass. When in times past, I might have, you know, ditched that idea because it wasn't panning out that day to go to an area where I know there's 3 and 4 pounders hanging out and downsize my bait.
Sure. So is that when did you go all the way over to?
Well, I've seen that video of the Working Class 017 in late 2018, bought a couple of baits. I was taking them out with me. I was throwing them, but I was really, you know, I'd throw them for an hour or 2 hours and I'd get frustrated and I'd go back to throwing conventional tackle and catching a few fish.
Yeah.
And I was asking a lot of the guys, you know, here, you know, some local hammers here, like, man, you ever seen anybody throw swim baits here? And they're like, nah, man, that stuff doesn't work here. That's out in California. And that was kind of, you know, it was in my head, like, maybe they don't work here, you know. But at the same time, my mind kept telling me, well, if a 10-pound bass will eat a 9-inch swim bait in California, then a 10-pound bass should eat one here. You know, maybe a different profile. If they're eating trout, maybe ours should eat gizzard shad. But
right.
Anyways, I threw them for a few months there, and then I would take a break from it, you know. And like I said, I was still throwing conventional tackle, and that was one of the mistakes that I made early on. I feel like is giving myself that door to back to comfort, you know,
Yep.
like this isn't working for me. I need to go back over here where I'm comfortable. And I had met a fellow swim baiter from here through Swim Bait Universe, Ashton Milan, and we connected somehow. I'd seen a post of his or something and clicked on his profile and seen that he lived about 30 or 40 miles from me, and we started talking, and he was kind of in the same place that I was. Like, he had some swim baits. He was really into the idea. Couldn't really figure out a bite on him yet, you know, and he was still doing the same thing, going back to comfort. So me and him discussed it, and we both kind of decided separately, but we didn't make a pact or anything, but we both just kind of said, hey, 2020 January, we're gonna go all in on this thing, you know, and if we don't catch a fish all year, that's cool, you know. And honestly, I don't even know if either one of us really believed that at the time, you know, that we could go the whole year and not go back to our comfort zone. But
you were willing to skunk the whole year if that's what it took.
If that's what it took, you know, at least when I made that decision, I was willing to. You know, whether I'd have made it through the whole year, fortunately, I didn't have to find out because I did start catching some fish. I caught my first swim bait fish in 2019 on a bull shed.
Okay.
I had dumped a 6-pounder on it literally 5 minutes before I caught this 3.5-pounder, and I have never been more stoked to dump a big fish in my life because it proved to me they will eat it. You know,
that they'll hit it, yeah.
They will eat it. I mean, I've never seen anybody that happy to dump a fish right at the edge of the boat, but I was ecstatic, you know, because I had been throwing this thing for, you know, off and on quite a bit of time for 3 or 4 months probably before I even got bit. And then I dumped that 6, and just a matter of minutes later, I caught about a 3.5. That was May of 2019, but I didn't actually dedicate myself to throwing big swim baits until January 1st of 2020.
Okay. So for somebody who hasn't dedicated all of their time on the water to fishing big swim baits, or somebody who maybe doesn't even want to, you know, somebody that just wants to add that as a tool to their belt, like how can that work for you, but maybe also like how could that work against you? Why do you think that worked against you for so long?
For me personally, and I can't speak for anybody else, for me, it took picking them up and saying, I'm not putting this down until I figure it out. You know,
I don't care. Figure it out.
I don't care what it takes. I've caught, you know, numbers of fish in my lifetime, not huge fish, but as far as going out and catching numbers, I've been doing that my whole life. I'm burnt out on it. I'm going to learn to use these to catch big fish.
Yeah.
Or I'm just not going to catch any more fish. You know, that was kind of the place I had to go to in my mind. And that's not a decision you make in a split moment. That's something that takes some time to soak in, you know, and really dedicate yourself to doing. And
no more flipping jigs.
Well, let me say this. In the beginning, that's exactly the way it was. Yeah. Just this year, I've started like this. The last couple of trips I went out, I tied a jig on, took it out. Because here's the thing about a jig. If they're not eating the swim bait, that jig may tell you something. I'm not using it to catch fish. I may. And if I'm feeding on a good jig bite, I may use it to catch a couple of big fish, you know. But to me, that jig, I've had a lot of questions during my struggles, like, man, you know, what's going on down there? Because I'm not a big electronics guy. I rarely use any electronics.
Sure.
So to me, that jig is a storyteller. It'll tell you what's on the bottom of the lake. It'll tell you what's down there. And if they're not eating swim bait, you know, hey, maybe they're dialed in on a crawl bite, you know. I consider myself a swim baiter, and I do throw 98% swim baits, probably, if we're being honest, because that just excites me. I know that potential for a big fish is always there with the swim bait, but I've kind of got to the point now where I've been so dedicated to it. It's like, okay, if I get the opportunity to throw an A-rig or a jig in a situation where that's my best shot at catching a trophy fish, would I be a fool not to consider doing that? You know?
Yeah.
So I am a swim baiter, but I've kind of come to the conclusion in this year that first and foremost, the objective of the game is to catch trophy fish, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So Scott Reese here, I've had his comment up here for a little while. But I wanted to leave it up here so it would remind me about something. So Scott's a hammer. Okay. So Scott's a little bit different than you. Scott's coming into this game as a conventional angler that has a knack for catching big fish. He has scored a lot of big fish in our kayak tournaments this year, and he's been doing the monthly onlines, and he's been, I mean, for Kansas, you catching 21, 20, 21, and I think he even maybe submitted a 22-inch fish. Those are big fish for around here, and he's catching them all on conventional tackle. So he's looking to add these big baits to his arsenal. I'm a little concerned about that because I'm fishing against him. But what is some advice that you could give him that maybe you haven't touched on yet, or a bait or something like that? And keep in mind, he is also a fellow kayak angler.
My advice to anybody who's already catching good quality fish and they just want to expand their arsenal a little bit to maybe include swim baits, I would start off with a bull shed. Honestly, it's a great confidence builder. It gets eat. It really depends on what he's throwing and catching fish on now. Is he a jig guy? Is he, is he a soft plastics guy?
I want to know too, Scott. Answer.
what areas is he fishing? What's his best way to, favorite way?
Sure.
I see that Scott's asking if I throw glide baits in dirty water. I absolutely throw glide baits in dirty water, Scott. Our water is almost never clear here. It's usually murky at best where I live. So the glide bait has been my bread and butter up until about midway through the year this year. For some reason, my glide bait just absolutely died off. But yes, throw the glide bait. A lot of guys will tell you not to do that, but I'm telling you, throw the glide bait in dirty water.
Yeah.
Now, what I do recommend is making a little bit more noise with the glide bait, moving a little bit more water with it. A lot of guys think that a glide bait is just slow and easy, and that does work in some situations. But I'll be honest with you, I've caught more big fish really ripping that thing half reel turns and moving some water. And then there's some things you can do to kind of help trigger bites once you've got that fish's attention with a glide bait. But absolutely throw it in dirty water. Scott, I'd say pick up a bull shed if you don't already have one. Depending on your comfort level with throwing bigger baits and how big a bait you're throwing now, pick up a 6-inch. If you can swing it, you've got a rod to handle it, pick up an 8-inch bull shed. And as far as glides go, man, there's so many to choose from. My bread and butter has been the KGB Legend, which is a 9-inch glide bait. But they also make a 7-inch Chad shed, which is a really good bait. A lot of guys love it. I'll throw it occasionally. I really prefer to stay in the 9-inch or bigger range just because I'm trying to target really big fish. So,
what about those head turners? Have you got a chance to throw one of those?
That's another one I need to touch on. That's a bait that I actually just recently. I've been working with Brock for since last year sometime on a couple of other baits that he was building, and we went through a couple of phases on a crappie glide. He sent me one, and we would go back and forth a little, and I think he had some other guys that were giving him insight on it. And finally just got one of those a couple of months. It's phenomenal. But this is the head turner. It's actually a smaller bait as far as the length of the bait. But it's different from the Chad shed because the profile is a bigger build. So even though it's not a heavy bait, it's not what I would consider a huge bait. It does have a nice big profile. So to me, it kind of fishes like a big bait. Okay. And I can throw it on a smaller rod. I throw this on a 2 to 4 ounce. You could throw it on the rod that we're giving away tonight, the 760. I've thrown it on the Ghost Code 710.
Sure.
Just a really nice small glide. To me, like I said, it has kind of a bigger glide feel to it as far as the profile. I absolutely love this bait. It's got good action to it. And this has by far been my favorite bait that I've worked with Brock on, and I'm stoked about this bait. So,
Do you throw a lot of them in black like that?
no, that's actually the first one I've thrown in black. It was white when he sent it to me, and I sent him a message and said, "Hey, I've got about 10 white glide baits. You mind if I throw some paint on this thing? Because I'm being curious
Yeah.
to see if I can get a black glide bait." So that will actually be going to Paint and Stump this winter for a custom paint job. But for the time being, it's rattle can black because I want to see if I can get it here. I just don't see a lot of guys throwing black glide baits, and I want to give it a try.
Shout out to Triple P. He can sling some paint.
He can. Peyton's done a lot of paint work for me. Absolutely love his work. I've got probably 6 or 7 baits painted by him, and I've got a triple trout cut tail floater that I think was probably one of the first 25 to 50 baits he ever painted.
Nice.
And he's come a long way in a short period of time since then.
Yeah, he's if you guys haven't seen the episode with Peyton Stumpf, we did have him on the show, so you guys can go back after this show and watch the one that we did with him. We've had a few other swim bait guys on here, and while I'm touching on that, I think you were the one that made a comment and requested that I have more swim bait anglers on here.
Absolutely.
Recently.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what made me want to do it. It was like, I'm not trying to be a poser because I'm not necessarily a big bait. I'm definitely no big bait guru, right? But I have an interest in it. I like to throw some big baits every now and then, but I don't know. You just might push me over the edge to become a truly dedicated trophy bass hunter.
Well, that's how I actually got turned on to your podcast in the beginning. I think was when Brennan was on your show.
Yeah.
Brennan's a good friend of mine. Went out last year and fished with Brennan for a couple of days. We went out to another state and spent a couple of days fishing. You had him on not just a long time after that, it seems like. And I went back and watched Peyton, of course, from Richie, and then I've watched Dustin and Edwin's. And I really enjoyed all of your episodes with the swim bait guys.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've decided to do more of them, and I'm glad that you asked me to come on.
Yeah, heck yeah. All right, so we've got Jessica Jones here. She says she's sitting Indian style. She wants to hear from the good book of J Flesh. Wow. Scales and Tails is in the house. Says he has no idea that you had an accent. And Bowcross is in agreement that he wasn't expecting that either. Isn't that funny? Like meeting people on social media, you see this picture, you have this idea in your head of like who this person is, and then just getting them behind a video camera kind of changes your perception of them a little bit. But he's from Tennessee. What'd you expect? You were mentioning Ashton earlier. He says, get your notepad out. This man knows some secrets. Jose V says he needs to read that book this winter. I did add that to my notes here. So I did read So Belly. I read that several years ago, but I need to go back and probably read that one again. But In Pursuit of Giant Bass, that's the one that we need to add to the list there.
That is referred to, if you go back and talk to a lot of the older trophy chasers, the early swim baiters at least the ones that I talked to, they referred to that book as the Big Bass Fishing Bible. So
Okay.
That came highly recommended by a lot of guys who are way further along in this game than I am.
So some of the stuff that you're going to expect to maybe read in this book, or maybe some of the stuff that you started to focus on, are you just spending, well, because you're not spending much time at all behind electronics. So are you just trying to make sure you're spending a majority of your time in these, more productive areas based on what they're eating and why they're going where they're going, and you're learning the habits of a bass?
The key to it for me is big bass fishing is a mentality, and we'll go into that. But as far as the areas, I spent most of my life. If somebody said, what kind of structure are you fishing, I'd say that bush over there. Well, and I honestly believed, innocently enough, that structure and cover were the same thing, and they're not. Structure is the bottom of the lake, the topographic changes in the bottom of the lake, and that's key for big bass.
Yeah.
Now the cover can be of help, but the structure is what really brings in the big bass. And once I started to figure that out and got a digital map of my lake, which is one of the few things that I do use electronics for,
Sure.
to look at this contour map, just from the things that I read in this book and I heard from other guys and just all these different sources, is that big bass prefer to be near deeper water. So you may catch a big bass in 3 feet of water, but more times than not, she's going to be near deeper water. Now, that doesn't mean 50 feet of water.
Right.
It may be 3 feet bordering 5 feet, but that difference. And that was a real eye opener for me. Mostly that's how I started off, was just going in and looking at contour maps and finding these structures and finding these things that these guys were saying and this book was saying are key structures. And I won't say that that's always true, because I know big bass go out and suspend in the middle of the lake somewhere sometimes. I hear guys talking about targeting those fish. For me, it's always been, since I got into, pursuing trophy bass, it's always been about that structure. I'm a structure fisherman. So I'm going to go in and look at a contour map. I'm going to see that there's a hard outside edge here and it drops off into such and such. And then I'll start to play through my head, what other factors, does that have a tree, within a couple of feet of that edge? Is there a rock pile there? How far is that from the nearest creek bed? Which is a travel route, a fence row, a creek bed. And my lakes, and in a lot of lakes, like I said, I can't speak for anybody else, just what I've learned from, these resources and putting it to use on my lakes, is that lake kind of works just like our highway system works. You've got a main channel that goes through a lake. Well, that's your interstate. And I actually had a guy explain it to me like this. That's your interstate. And you've got a cross ditch coming in. Well, that's your highways, and then you've got a little feeder ditch that comes into that. That's your back roads. Those bass will use those things and fence rows, maybe even just a little ledge, to travel from one place to another. So when you're looking at these structures, you're looking for the ways that they can travel in here. How fast can a bass get from here back out to deeper water? And it takes a little time to start to build your mind around how all that works and thinking about it. But once you kind of start to visualize it, and you can take that contour map and look at it, you'll kind of start to pick out key areas that should be holding big bass. And then it's just a matter of going out, trying to prove that there's big bass in that area. And sometimes it's a timing thing. There may not be big bass there all year. There may not even be big bass there, but for a 15-minute window throughout the day. But it's those key structures for me, but because I don't have electronics.
Okay. Heck yeah. Okay. Brock Bolden. That's a Slay Baits there, ain't it?
It is.
Okay. Shout out to Brock. Thanks for the giveaway. And if you guys are interested in checking out his baits, I do believe I saw a post here from him somewhat recently that looked like maybe they would have some stuff, or they did have some stuff recently. However, if you are interested in getting one, I'm sure you can hit him up, and you might have to wait a little bit, or he might have something ready to go. Slay Baits over there on Facebook. And he may have, I don't know if he had an Instagram, but he definitely has a Facebook.
He does.
Definitely has
Shout out, Brock. Thanks for the giveaway bait tonight. And it's an awesome bait, guys. Whoever gets this is going to be very happy with it.
Let's see here. I got something. He's got a little swim video. I think you guys, so for you guys that are listening to this podcast later, we'll have this podcast up on Spotify. You're not going to be able to see this, but for those of you that are watching, can you see that? I had to go to a different screen to get that going there, but can you see that video, or is it just a still frame? Jason?
That's video. Yeah. It's
Okay.
showing.
All right. I got to switch over to another screen just to, I think,
Gotcha.
to get it going. So, yeah, there you go. That's the head turner, half reel turns there. So, and then as you can see, that's what it looks like in white there. You saw the black one that Jason showed off there. So, if you guys haven't commented and you're interested in winning that bait, go ahead, throw a comment in there. Tell us what your favorite swim bait is. I don't know. Tell us what your favorite color is. I don't really care. Just put a comment over there and do me a favor. Go like those guys on Facebook and do the same for F5. Scott Reese. So he was asking about glide baits and dirty water. I know Edwin, when he lived here in Kansas, that's what he threw, pretty much all glide baits here in Kansas. Now, I haven't thrown a ton of glide baits, I'll be honest with you guys. My confidence is in one of Edwin's wake baits, a couple of his wake baits. And I guess that's the theory behind it, is that it causes more commotion. But, just I like throwing a crankbait, so maybe that's why I like throwing those wake baits the way that I do. Jay Bow says the big crankbaits work well in summer as well, depending on depth. You are fishing the 8XD or DT16, will get bit as well. Okay. Jose is in New York, and he can't get a glide bait to save his life. 90% of our waters are crystal clear, and I get tons of followers. You got anything for him? How do you turn those followers into
You just got to keep putting the time in with the glide baits. Every glide bait is different. I don't fish them in clear water very often at all, unless I'm going out of town somewhere and fishing. I haven't had a ton of luck on them in clear water, but I'll say this: with a glide bait and with any swim bait, in my opinion, a key factor is angles. It's all about angles. It's about knowing how those big fish are set up, and not trying to make them eat a bait, but putting that bait somewhere where big fish want to eat. You have to put it in there where they want it. I mean, it's hard to explain. I can't teach you everything you need to know about that, but try different angles. Take your boat around, set the opposite of what you were last time you were on that spot and had followers.
Yeah.
Those big bass are ambush predators. And there's been times where I went and fished a spot. I knew big bass were there. Couldn't get them to eat. Changed my boat angle next time I come back, set up over here. And I've learned over the last about 2 years, really last year and this year, that even with swimmers, maybe not so much soft baits. I think even with soft baits, it is a big deal. Depending on where you're fishing the big soft bait, but the angles, that's something that you really need to be switching up. If you're not having success getting eaters, I would try switching that up and throwing from a different angle and trying to put those baits into those ambush points where those fish want to eat them, and not make them follow it out of that ambush area to come out and chase it over however many acres of open water you have there.
Does it come down to them just understanding, like they've probably lost so many opportunities that they don't want to like exert the energy to, like, they just know that their chances of actually putting that fish in their mouth are
well
smaller?
I've heard a lot of guys say that big bass are lazy, and I don't believe that. I've seen how fast a big bass can swim. They're not lazy. They're very efficient. They know how they want. They know how they want to eat.
Right.
And if you put that bait somewhere where she can pin it, she's a lot more likely to eat it than she is if she's got to chase it out there. Now, she may follow it out of curiosity, and she might even eat it out there if she sees the opportunity.
Sure.
But it's really about just finding that right angle, and
Sure.
I won't tell anybody exactly how to do that on your waters, but for me and for a few of the other guys that I've had that discussion with, it's a big factor.
Heck yeah. Okay. Scott Reese says he does have a bull shed, so he just got one. So he might be spending a little bit more time with that one now.
Hey, Scott, throw that thing. Leave everything else at home. Just go out and throw it and throw it and throw it. Not during a tournament. When you've got time to go out and just put some time in on a bait. Burn it, pause it, swim it slow. I've got a buddy that swears he's never caught one burning. I burned the bull shed with half second to second pauses in it and just get wrecked on it when they're in the mood for it. Just go out and put in the time and figure it out. It's a good bait and it will get bit.
Heck yeah. Scales and Tails says, no one is ever the same off Facebook. Everyone is a catfish. So
Thanks, Adrian.
You catfished him tonight, apparently. J Bow says, J Bow, probably J Bow, not J Bow. I don't know, one or the other. On or near the ledges. You got lots of ledges where you are, don't you?
Well, that guy right there is a hammer. So he's as good a big bass hammer as I know. He fishes mostly conventional tackle, but he's putting up big fish consistently as anybody I know.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, maybe he needs to throw some swim baits in the arsenal. He might really blow you away.
I would be scared to compete against him in a swim bait tournament. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so Adrian wants to know your thoughts on new electronics. Example, live target, Panoptics. Does he feel that can dramatically raise your chance at a trophy fish? As always, just because you can see them doesn't mean they eat. What are your thoughts on electronics, specifically forward-facing sonar?
That's a rabbit hole. It's something that I've thought a lot about.
Yeah.
Do I think it puts you in areas where you can confirm whether there's big fish there or not? Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic tool for that. And I've been on the boat with a few guys who were able to put big fish in the boat with that forward-facing sonar that I would have had no idea those fish were even there probably, or wouldn't have known I wouldn't have been able to put it right in their face and get them to eat. I've also been on the boat with guys who spent a lot of time fishing to inactive fish because they could see them, just beating them to death and trying to get them to eat. And I think it's a tool that if used the right way with swim baits could be very effective. There's guys doing it. We were talking about Dusty earlier.
Yeah.
There's guys doing it, with swim baits that are having a lot of success,
Yeah.
The Ashton guy that I was talking about earlier, he got it this past year. He's not using it the same way that a lot of guys are using it, I don't believe. I think he's using it. Here's the thing. How much time does a guy like me spend going to spots that he knows should be holding big fish, but they're not holding big fish at this moment? That's a feeding area. They come in 15, 30 minutes at a time. He can pull right in there, look and see. It's not popping right now,
Sure.
So how much time does he eliminate that he would have spent fishing dead water? I think it can be a very effective tool. And I think Dusty even said a lot of times he fishes directly to fish that he can see on the screen and puts it in their face and has, a level of success with that sometimes. So I don't know. It's something that I'm definitely considering for the future. For me personally, it was important to me on a personal level to learn how to target trophy fish the way those guys that I looked up to learned it before all the forward-facing sonar and all that. But once you kind of got a general idea of how that works, might need to consider any tool that would make you better at what you're already doing,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there could maybe even be a disadvantage in certain situations where a guy pulls up and he's on one of those feeding spots and they're not there. So he packs up and leaves. And, had he not had that technology on the boat, he would have spent, maybe you put a number in your head, I'm going to spend 25 minutes here. If I don't get a bite, then I'll leave. Well, 25 minutes goes by and they show up.
They could have both done. Yeah.
You know,
I agree. And I also question whether the real, I don't think, because I don't have enough experience with it, but I question whether those really, really big fish, and I mean the really big smart fish, the double digits into the teener class, I wonder about their sensitivity to that. I see a lot of guys consistently putting 6, 7, and 8 pound fish on with live scope. And those are great fish. But if you're targeting double digit fish into the teen class, I've seen a few things that made me really question whether maybe those fish are a little bit more sensitive to that. If they pick up on that at all, they're gone. And I don't know that. I don't have the experience to say that. That's just through conversations with other guys who have had a little bit of experience. And here's the thing: if a fish turns and goes away, a big fish like that, there's so many different ways that. Are you sure it was the live scope? Did you tap your trolling motor? Maybe something else spooked her. There's so many variables in big bass fishing. It's hard to tie it down to one thing, but that would definitely be a concern of mine.
Yeah, I mean, especially when I go in real shallow water situations, a lot of time I turn my sonar off altogether. Just because I think that they can definitely sense that. And if we're giving the bigger bass more credit on the way they want to eat a bait, they probably learned over the years when this thing's zapping me, all over my body, I get these big treble hooks in the side of my head, or whatever. So there's something to that, I'm sure. Yeah. There's definitely guys putting big fish in the boat with forward-facing sonar.
There he is.
But if you look at guys like Josh Jones, they're doing it from a long ways away. He's chasing some of those fish 50 plus feet out. 100 feet out. So that's maybe a little bit different too. So
I agree. I think the distance from the guys that I've talked to that have had a pretty good level of success with it, all of them mention that distance, all the ones that I've talked with. Once that fish gets with a big fish, once she gets within a certain range, she tends to start picking up on what's going on. And I think the more people who have forward-facing sonar, the more aware those big fish are going to become of what that is. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes, because Josh Jones did say in a recent interview that when he first started going down to that particular lake in Texas, they were having 100 fish days, and now they were catching a lot less fish on the same lake. Again, a lot of variables there, but just makes you wonder,
For sure.
That exposure is teaching them something,
Yeah. Yeah. So just make sure when, you plug that technology in, you're actually paying attention to what's going on, and try to use that information to not just say, hey, there's a fish that I want to catch, but like, why was he here to begin with? Because
Absolutely.
there may be a day where you got to shut that thing off, to catch them.
Absolutely.
Brock says more is coming. So stay tuned to the Slay Baits page if you guys want to see what he's got up his sleeve, see what kind of baits he's got coming next, or some new colors. So again, if you guys want to enter in for a chance to win the head turner, comment over there and you will get to pick your paint. Again, if you are just tuning in, we've had people kind of coming in and out, so we've had a pretty good influx of people here all night. So some of you guys are just coming in for the night. We are doing a giveaway. Make sure you comment over there. I've got a little list I'm writing up over here, and at the end of the night, we're going to do a random number generator, and we are going to pick 2 random winners, and we're going to give away the Slay Baits head turner, right? That's what it's called, right? The head turner.
Yes.
I almost said head hunter because we were in the whole hunting. There you go.
And there's another look at the bait for guys just coming in.
Yep.
Awesome bait. If you hadn't gone and like Slave Bait's page on Facebook, go and like the page. He's got some other stuff coming down the line.
And then we're going to do also F5 showing up tonight and giving out some awesome stuff as well. The Ghost Code 760. They're going to give away a rod sleeve for the rod. They're going to do a bait wrap and a hat. So they're hooking you guys up tonight. So 2 winners tonight. All you got to do, comment over there. And if you like what you see here tonight, hit that subscribe button. That'll help me out a bit. We'll keep bringing guys like Jason on here, and I think some people are going to take something away from this. I think this will get people excited. You kind of talked about having a history, having growing up fishing and being able to put a lot of fish in the boat, but making the transition to being a trophy bass hunter. And if you guys are interested in doing that, follow this guy on Facebook. He does also have some YouTube videos as well. It's jflesh.bassin over on YouTube, and he's got some videos of him catching some big fish there. Did you say your PB's on there? Or?
Yes. I caught my current PB is 10 pounds, 1 ounce. I caught it last April on a KGB Legend, and that cast to catch video is on my YouTube page.
Okay.
Most of what you'll find on my YouTube page is not run of the mill YouTube stuff. It's just cast and catch. Put in no fancy, I'm trying to sell you something. Just, I feel like my main objective is to catch big fish. My second objective is to help guys who came from where I was at to be inspired or to be fired up, see something that's just going to get them going and make them want to take the steps to go out and put in the time to learn how to catch big bass.
What is it about fishing? Like I totally get where you're coming from. I feel the need to like share this passion with other people. I feel called to and I don't consider myself an expert on the subject necessarily, but I've been introducing people to fishing since 2015, right? And so that's pretty cool to say that there are people out there that fish or that kayak fish, and maybe part of I have a part in that, right? So, but I feel led to that. What is it about fishing that has impacted you to the point where you feel like you got to share it with other people? Like, what is it?
I got into this this last round and really dove in on trying to learn to target big bass. But because ultimately I want to hold big bass. Like that's for a lot of people, fishing is fun and they don't want to work. They want it to be relaxing, and that's fine. I don't have anything. To me, it's not relaxing at all. Like, I mean, it's like a day of work for me because my mind is just overthinking every little detail and how do I do this? How do I do that? But at the end of the day, the community is a huge part of why guys like myself who are going out and getting stumped, day after day, week after week sometimes, and even on into 2 or 3 months before you catch another big fish, the one you're trying to catch, is having that community, of guys that are, they're cheering you on and you're cheering them on, and you might reach out to a guy with your frustrations and it's like, man, I'm ready to take up golf, and one of those guys that you met in the community is like, come on, man, you're on big fish. You just, you're in one of those moments right now. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like there should be no division amongst swim baiters. I know when you get these big groups, you're going to have a little bit of this, that, and another with any big group of any kind of people.
Sure.
But really, man, this community's full. It's got a lot of really good people in it. A lot of people that want to help you. And they want to see you succeed. And that's been a big factor for me, as I'm sure it has you, the camaraderie.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of good people. There's probably a lot lot of questionable folks, I guess, that like to fish too. And that's, and that's something that we can't forget about. Like, we think that just because, you and I have these morals and stuff that, we find out from time to time, like with those walleye guys, there's some dirt bags in the mix, but, they give us a bad name, when these people are on social media and they're running their mouth and stuff like that. But if you look behind the scenes, and this is something that we talked about with, I think it was with Adrian when he came on. Shout out to Adrian with Scales and Tails podcast there. But there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on that nobody ever knows about. There's a lot of people that are putting people on new baits that they may not be able to afford, just because they want, I don't know what it is, but it's like this need to introduce people to something that you're so passionate about. It's like, I love this. This is what I live for. And if I can help somebody else find this, it's almost like a religion. It's almost like, it's, I don't know. It's definitely, I can't really explain it. And
it really is. And, for me, it's about the big bass. The next guy may be about going out and catching, I want to go out and catch 20 fish today, and that's perfectly fine. To me,
yeah,
I know how I feel when I put in all those hours on the water and I finally get that big fish to eat. I fooled her. I know that feeling is a high, and you want other people to be able to experience that,
Yeah.
But I'm also a big proponent of go out and put in the work to do it. I'm not going to tell you how to go to my spot, what bait to throw and what angle to set on to catch the fish that I'm targeting. But
Sure.
if you're putting in the work and you're grinding and you're trying to take in information and you got the right questions, I'm in your corner. I'm willing to help you any way I can. And there's a lot of guys that are that way in this community. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it weren't for some guys in the swim bait community taking me under their wing and saying, hey, if you got questions that you're scared to ask in a group of 30,000 because you're going to get flogged or, whatever the situation might be,
Yeah.
hit me up. Here's my number. I asked a lot of questions that in hindsight now I'm like, man, those guys were probably tired of hearing my questions because I have a lot of them.
Heck yeah. Yeah. And here's a bait from one of those guys. Edwin, some guys are talking about him over there in the comment section right now. And Edwin is a good friend of mine, and he's a Kansas guy, right? He's down in he's in the Lone Star State now, but he's a Kansas guy, and he's a kayak guy too. And he introduced me to big baits, and he gave me my first big bait. And that was something that Edwin did for a lot of people here in Kansas. He would come and he would fish with us, or he would come to an event like when we did the spring classic thing that they did at Cabela's, and he did a swim bait seminar there. He gave people swim baits out of his tackle box just because he wanted them to experience what it was like. So shout out to Edwin.
Edwin's a good dude. I've had the honor of talking to him a few times. I root for that guy because he's really put in the work, and I like to see him succeed.
Yep.
I hadn't used one of his baits yet, but I like the one you just held up, Edwin. You get extra one of those you need to get rid of. Might be able to shoot some money your way, bud.
That's the Tum Tum. Someone was on here talking about the nuisance, and that is the baby nuisance is like, that's my thing. And I've caught a lot of fish on the baby nuisance, which long story short, I lost. And I almost cried. I almost cried. Like, I was so emotionally attached to that bait because I just had so much confidence in it. But he's going to build me another one, and I'm going to catch more fish on it. But it's funny. Do you have a bait like that?
I had a bait like that. I lost the KGB Legend blank that I didn't have confidence in baits at all until early last year, March of last year. I caught my first glide bait fish, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right. I think I kind of get it now. And then man, just with the bass being where they were and me being dialed in on where they were at, what they were doing, and taking that bait, man, I went on a run where I was absolutely wrecking big fish on that bait. I caught the 10-1 on it. I caught numbers of 6 to 7 pound fish on it. 4 days after I caught my 10-1, I was on one of the most populated. I mean, it's heavily pressured. It's a little 560 acre lake. It's actually my home lake. I was fishing in a pit tourney. I'd caught that 10-1 on a Sunday. I went out on the last day of that online tournament. I think I'd caught a 5-11 to go with the 10-1 on Monday. And then Thursday after work, I went out and I stuck an absolute, to this day, it still breaks my heart. This fish was bigger than the 10-1, and she just made me look like an idiot. She ran over beside the kayak. She came up. She could just barely get her head up, and she had a head like I could still see it in my head now, just like a pit bull. I mean, and she just made me look like a rookie completely. I mean, just came up, shook, and I couldn't keep tension on her. She got off to the side, and I couldn't get her turned, and bait popped out. But I think in 3.5 or 4 months, I caught over 100 pounds of trophy fish on that one bait, and then I lost it. Kind of had to have one of those moments where, got to keep myself together here. But I try not to get that attached to baits anymore. I've got a couple more of these now. That one will always be special to me at the bottom of the lake. But
have you? I don't mean to cut you off, but I saw today, and I just went back and checked while you were talking there. KGB just released some of the Legend Reborns, I believe, today in bone for $120. I had to let that one go by me, but I did. I was about to add one to the cart there, but
what were they? The blank Legend?
I'm assuming they were blanks.
Yeah,
they
if
said
they were $120, they were probably blanks. They probably weren't painted. That's what I caught the 10-1 on, and like I said, in
the same one.
Like 3.5, maybe 4 months. I'd have to go back and look at my files because I document all my fish, but. Just a few months there, man, I caught over 100 pounds of 6+ pound fish up to that 10-1 that I caught on that one single bait. I mean, that bait gave me confidence in glide baits. It became my bread from a guy who didn't have the confidence to hardly throw them at all to that was my bread and butter,
And that was the Reborn. That wasn't like the original one.
That was the Reborn. I've never thrown the original Legend.
Okay.
I may have thrown one. Maybe when I went out with Brennan, I might have thrown one. I can't remember. I threw a couple, maybe a Benson. Might have thrown them. I've never owned one. So
sure.
But now the Reborns, I keep those on tap. I've got a few of the blanks, and then I've got a shad profile, and you can see how beat up that bait is. I mean, it's been through it. That bait is actually painted by Peyton, and then I've got one that I call Rosy Cheeks. It's more of like a solid white color. It doesn't have that yellow like the blanks does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got little pink cheeks. And I throw that one in certain situations. But that was my bread and butter glide bait. That's what gave me my confidence in glide baits to pick up other glide baits and throw them. Of course, I throw the King. And
wow, that's a big one.
Got a few other ones that I really like. The little head turner, the one we're giving away tonight, man, that's a phenomenal little glide bait. Just recently picked up a Hinkle. Hadn't had a chance to stick a big fish on it yet, but I've been wanting one for a little while and finally was able to pick one up in a trade a couple months ago. So looking forward to throwing that one. And then I really downsized and got rid of a lot of glides because I got so into them that I was just buying everything. And I feel like sometimes when you put that many baits in your arsenal, it can be a detriment because you're constantly trying. I would rather take 4 or 5 baits that are proven and go out and put the time in with them and really figure out, how to really make those baits do what they're intended to do.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if you kind of had to make that switch over, to that trophy bass hunter. You really dialed in how to fish this certain bait, and then just because it's a glide bait doesn't mean it's the same deal, And it's good to have those different tools, but maybe only a handful of tools will help you decipher when you need to bust the different actions out. You want to break that down a little bit? Have you gotten into, like which glide baits you'll use in certain situations?
Yeah, for me, the Legend, I hear a lot of people say, oh, this glide or that glide. To me, I can use that glide in a lot of situations, man. I can slow that thing down. I can do, third turns, or I can do half turns with it. I can speed it up. You can burn this bait, on half turns, or you can just get sketchy with it. Just do odd turns with it. Just make it get crazy and erratic. And sometimes that's the way they want it. Like the King, for me personally, the King that I've got, when I throw it, I usually give it more of a slow, wide, methodical action. I don't use it as a choppy glide as much.
Sure.
That bait has a lot of drawing power, so I'm usually just trying to. For me, if I can use a bait that big, even to get a follower, that's teaching me something. If I can get a big fish just to be interested enough, the drawing power brings her in, and she follows it to where I can see her. She just gave herself to me. She might not eat that bait then, but I kind of can start figuring out where she's at, what she's doing, and I may go back and target her later on in prime conditions with a Legend.
Throw a different bait at her altogether.
And the HPH and the Hinkle, I really hadn't spent enough time with yet. Both of those are relatively new baits to my arsenal, and I got rid of a few glide baits that I really wasn't. They weren't really filling a void in my glide arsenal for me.
Sure.
So I got rid of those, and I picked up these two, and I really hadn't figured out how each one of those baits is going to benefit me. But it's two baits that I've been wanting to put in some time with. So I'm going to do that and see, how they fit into my arsenal, or if they fit into my arsenal.
Okay. What about night fishing? Is that something you do much of?
Never in my life until this year. I was struggling earlier this year to get bit, and I'd been wanting to try night fishing. Went out, took me and a guy that I kayak fish with some. We set a date around I wanted to go out on a full moon the first time. I know they say the new moon, is when you get bit, but the first time we went out on that lake at nighttime, I wanted to have the light of the moon to kind of be able to at least get an idea of casting and not throwing up trees, and just the first time. So we were going to do a full moon trip, and then 2 weeks later we were going to do a new moon trip. And we went on the full moon trip, got there a couple of hours before dark, went on, put on the water, fished 13 hours that night, on up into that, a couple of hours after daylight the next morning. And I caught one fish right before the sun went down, and I don't think either one of us got bit again till 3:30-ish in the morning. I caught a 713, and that was actually on a modified musky jitterbug, not a swim bait or a wake bait. That was actually given to me by a friend of mine who
Nice.
is a fellow fan of Mr. L.J. Brasher. I'm not sure if you're familiar with L.J. Brasher, his history, but he caught over 1,000 double digits in his lifetime, primarily fishing at night on the musky jitterbug that he would modify to make a specific sound. And a guy that I met through my studies on L.J. Brasher had about 40 of these that he modifies and fishes at night. He catches a lot of big fish on them even now. So he had gifted me that one. That was the first time I'd ever took it out. I think I took 2 wake baits and the musky jitterbug and went out. I stuck that 713. I think the photo was taken at 3:36 in the morning.
Wow.
And then the boy that was with me caught a 4 something about an hour or two later, and then we both missed a couple of big bites apiece right as the sun was coming up on wake baits and top waters. They just weren't getting the hooks. But that was my first experience with it, and we wound up not being able to do the new moon trip, but it's something I'm definitely going to spend more time doing.
Yeah.
Moving with.
Well, when I immediately thought of swim baits and night fishing, the guy that makes, I'm drawing a blank here. He's got a YouTube channel, I believe, as well, and he makes a bait called the Bruce Gillis.
Yeah.
And he's in like New Hampshire,
I think
and
Chris Ellis, right?
yeah, and I think for a while there, he was fishing every single night or something crazy like that. And he always had good experience, or maybe not always, but he was always posting about having some good experiences at night. So got me thinking that I need to spend more time out there at nighttime.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't have a ton of experience with it. My one night fishing trip, like I said, we fished for 13 hours. I had one big bite, which is what I'm after, and glad to catch that fish.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing more. I know some guys that are absolute hammers at nighttime, just like you're talking about Daniel there in the comments. That dude hammers them at nighttime. So
I guess the only night fishing trip I've ever done wasn't a full-on night fishing trip. It was this year. I think we called it quits about 2:00 or something like that. I caught a 3-pounder. And then I caught a 6-pound channel cat on one of Edwin's baits. So it wasn't a complete dud, but about after 11:00, it was just nothing. So,
well, I've heard a lot of those guys, especially the old guys like LJ Brasher. He would talk about fishing, and he was hardcore. He would fish all night for several nights on end, but a lot of those guys talk like it could just be dead, nothing's happening, and all of a sudden you'll just hit a window and you can catch multiple big fish, in that short window, and then it's dead again, So, and that happens in the daytime too a lot.
Sure.
One of my best days throwing swim baits was last year. Went out, fished the bite window that was listed, that morning. Major bite window, nothing. I was on some key big bass areas, nothing. When I went to move from one of the spots on my milk run to another spot, and I happened to notice along the path there was a big bass chasing bait fish, and I flipped in behind her with a glide bait. She ate it on her way back out. They were just running in and hitting them and then running back out. And I sat just in a stretch up and down this particular structure, and I caught a 7.4, a 6.10, a 6.7, dumped one that was 7 or 8 pounds, and then I had a 4.5 and then a 2 something that all ate a 9-inch glide bait.
Yeah.
And I was back at home with a 27, 28 pound limit, would have been over 30 with the fish I dumped. I was back at home before lunch,
Wow.
So sometimes you just have those days where you just get that bite that's just, it's phenomenal for a period of time. And I mean, as fast as it started, I capitalized on it, and it was dead. Nothing was happening after that. I spent probably, I think that ended at around 8:30 that morning. And I stayed for a couple more hours, fished some big bass spots, just absolutely no movement at all.
Yes, I've definitely experienced some of those slow times myself. Scott wants to know, how much do you pay attention to weather, season, time of day, moon phase, etc. when you're targeting?
I do pay attention to it because I document all of it every time I go fishing. I don't let it decide when I go fishing, because
there you go.
A guy who's been chasing trophy bass for 4 or 5 years, and really just started capitalizing on the big bite in the last 3 years, relatively consistently. I don't have enough data compiled to say, hey, it doesn't make sense to go fishing during this moon phase or that moon phase or when.
Yeah.
I do pay attention to it. I do document it, and I have learned that there's very specific bites on my home lake that only happen on this spot when the wind is doing this, or this works better during this phase. Or I do utilize it. I do pay very close attention to it, but I won't sit at home just because, I've never caught a fish during these conditions.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And let's see, where was I going to go with that? I just totally blanked on that one. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I just completely lost my train of thought there, but I did. I had something right on the tip of my tongue. I was gonna ask you to build on that, but I have no idea what it is. All right. Well, we'll just move right along here. We've got enough comments, kind of got behind on those. So I'm going to go ahead and find one that we can jump to. Um, can you hit a point on the times when to use certain glides, color, weight, etc.? You kind of got into that, like what you use the different glide baits for. But yeah, maybe go into color and weight, how those play a factor in.
Usually for me, the color is just dependent upon the water clarity for my fishing on my home lake. Now, if I go to another lake, I've got two other lakes that I fish besides my home lake. My home lake is super, super pressured. It's a 560-acre lake. It's been featured on 2 national fishing shows, and Bill Dance has written an article about your chance for trophy bass on this lake. So they're there,
Yeah.
but they're very difficult to catch. Tons of pressure, and 560-acre lake, the average Saturday and Sunday is somewhere usually around 35 to 40 boats. If they're having a tournament, you might see as many as 100 boats on a 500-acre lake. So
Wow.
it absolutely gets hammered. So occasionally, I try to stay to one lake because I feel like the more time you spend on one body of water, the more opportunities you're going to get to see what those fish are doing, what the bait fish are doing, what the fish are doing. You're going to notice movements in those fish that a guy who's only there every couple of weeks. If a guy's skipping around the lakes, he's getting a chance to fish a lot of different lakes and put himself in front of a lot of big fish if he's in the right areas. But he's not really learning to follow those fish and what they're doing and learn how to target them throughout the year. And so I try to stay to my home lake. It gets very difficult to do with the pressure sometimes, and occasionally I'll have to have a break. And I've got 2 other lakes, which also get some pressure, but not nearly that amount of pressure. That I'll go and fish a few times a year, just to kind of give myself a break from the craziness of the home lake. But for me, glide color is totally dependent upon my water clarity, and if I know what those fish are feeding on, I'm going to be trying to replicate that as closely as I can, and then they'll be able to get a good look at it.
Sure.
My home lake has been for years primarily a gizzard shad lake that's starting to wane a little bit, I think, but I like to use gizzard shad colors when I can and when I feel like they're visible in that water. And really, like I was saying to the guy earlier, visibility is not even a huge factor to me. I want them to be able to see it, but I feel like if you're really moving some water with a glide bait, I think those fish pick up on it.
Yeah.
They're super sensitive to their environment. I think seeing it helps them key in on it, but I think those fish know that bait's there whether they can see it or not.
Okay. Now, what about weight? Do you add weight to your baits? Do you?
I do occasionally. Let me see if I can find one here. I use the little weights on the bottom. You can actually see it on this ankle shad if you look close. That bait has a tendency.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that, but you can actually stack those weights. You can put 1 on there. You can stack 2. You can stack 3.
Just like they're like an adhesive.
Yeah, they just peel and stick, and they actually stick really good even after they've been in the water. Occasionally, you'll have a big fish eat and knock them off of there, but they're cheap. You get I think 70 to 100 of them in a pack for $6. So
those big fish like to eat those weights sometimes. I heard.
Yeah, and they also make them in a white because I like to match whatever the bottom of my bait is. So it's a different company that makes them in the white. I think it's a Zapow or Zapu or something makes it in a white, and you can they're a little bigger weights than these, but I'll just clip them, cut them, stick them on there. I actually learned about those from a recent video that Butch did on the Dips 250. He used them. So
nice. Okay. Heck yeah. Now What about hooks? Do you have a preference on the type of hooks?
On most of my baits, I like to use the owner ST36s, and a lot of guys disagree with me on that because they are thin wire hooks. And I have a lot of guys message me and say, "Hey man, how'd you catch a 10-pound bass right at the kayak, her digging down on a ST? Like I'm bending them out on 3-pounders."
Yeah.
And here's what I think a lot of guys really fail to think about when it comes to hooks. If you're using fluoro or braid or something that's got less stretch to it, you're going to bend those hooks out unless your rod is super parabolic. You know, you have to have some give somewhere. So when I see guys asking the question, you know, what hook should I use? Or another guy asks, what line should I use? Hey, what's the best rod? The answer is you have to find 3 that work well together.
Yeah.
There's 3 things between you and a giant fish when you hook her. And that's your rod, your line, and your hooks. You know, the bait's there, but I'm just talking about as far as what you're using to fight that fish.
Sure.
And I throw glides on mono. So, and the F5 rods paired with the mono, I get by with the ST36 hooks. Do I bend them out? Absolutely, but I'm not dumping fish because of it. Once I catch a big fish, those hooks are usually wrecked, but that's okay. It costs me $1.25 to replace each hook. You know, I've got $150 in a bait. I can throw $2 or $3 worth of hooks on there and go again. You know?
Yeah, sure.
I buy those hooks usually anywhere from 100 to 200 at a time, and I just keep them. That's another thing for me. I am super obsessive about having my gear in order. I change, if I'm using mono, I change after every trip. When I come off the lake, I unspool. Before I go back to the lake, I respool. I don't leave it sitting on the reels overnight because it builds the memory worse. I change hooks obsessively. If I'm out fishing a bait hadn't been bit, and I've been fishing this bait for 6 hours with those hooks dragging against that resin, in my mind, I've compromised the points on that hook. I'm changing.
Wow. Okay.
You know, but here's the thing. That's part of that trophy chaser mentality that I was talking about. A man has to make if he's going to go into that world of, hey, I'm specifically targeting.
Yeah.
I catch 6, 7 pound fish. I catch 8-pound fish occasionally.
Yeah.
I've caught a 9 and a 10. You know what I'm saying? But the fish I'm targeting,
yeah,
I have to have all of my stuff in order because I'm not targeting 6-pounders. I catch a lot of 6-pounders, but I'm looking for my fish of a lifetime, which is good. It has to be bigger than 10-1 to be my fish of a lifetime. So when I go out, that's what I'm targeting, and that's what I'm trying to make sure my gear is prepared for.
You gotta be firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely.
I remembered. I just completely lost it. It was like I never had the thought, and it was just gone. Okay, but this is where I was going earlier when we were talking about this like kind of list that you have started to accumulate and the information that you're using, to maybe help you be more productive on the water. But that kind of led me to a different question, which was, how often are you getting out there on the water? Are you limited by like your work schedule? Like what does your typical, let's say, week look like?
Well, during the time of the year where we have the late nights, where the late evenings, you have to be off of our lakes by 30 minutes after sunset. My home lake,
Okay.
Not any lake that is managed by TWRA. That's not all of our public lakes, just the ones that are managed by the TWRA, stocked and managed by them. There's like 26 of them in Tennessee. My home lake is one of them. You have to be off the water by 30 minutes after sundown. So during the summer, when I can get out there for a few hours, usually 2 to 3 days a week, I'm on the lake in the kayak because I just throw it in the back of the truck. I can stop at the lake. It's between where I work and my house. I can stop, throw it in, do 2.5, 3 hours, and then head home for the night. So I usually try to do that 2 to 3 nights a week. And then I'm going to fish at least one full day on the weekend, whether it be Saturday and Sunday. And if I can get by with it, I'm going to fish 2 days. those could be on the kayak or they could be in the boat. Generally, if I'm on the boat, I'm out there all day. I mean, it's a get up and spend the day putting together clues and trying to figure out, what the big fish are doing, and just trying to gather more information about, and sometimes, man, you get it dialed and you can go out there and put in 2 or 3 hours in the evening to get some good fish, and sometimes like the last couple of months, man, like I'll be honest with you, the same lake, same fish that I had dialed this time last year, I honestly, I couldn't tell you what they're doing. They're not eating big baits. And I honestly think because of the year that we're having, or maybe, our water's super low, the water levels changed up and then back down. I don't know what's got them messed up right now, but I've been humbled these last couple of months, but that's part of the game. And that's part of having that trophy chaser mentality. I know that I could go to that spot right over there and throw a spinner bait or a crank bait or whatever and catch some fish. But that's just not what it's not what I'm in it for. Back to your question, I try to put in 2 to 3 nights a week when time will allow. And then one day, if not both days on the weekends, I'm going to be on the water. I think last year I put in just shy of 600 hours on the water.
Wow. Sorry, I'm trying to keep these. We're having some weird comments popping up here. Every now and then we get these people that jump on the podcast and just like to say some off the wall stuff. I don't know what they're getting out of it, but whatever. Yeah. So, okay. So, but like this time of the year, you're having to,
one day on the weekend.
Yeah.
Right now. And a lot of that's determined. I had COVID earlier this year, and I just haven't been able to, like, my energy level, I just haven't been 100%. So my time has slowed down a little bit, but I'm still getting, even the last 2, and I hadn't caught a fish over 6 since August 13th. And I've still been out there at least one full day every weekend. And if I get a chance to shoot by there for an hour in the evenings with the kayak, if I get off of work an hour early, I'm going.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm like once a week is about what I can, if I get out twice in 1 week, man, I'm really doing something right. And the wife's probably mad at me, but in my mind I'm doing something right. Fishing for potatoes. I wanted to acknowledge your comment here. I finally got your beard oil sent out today. I apologize for the delay, but he was the winner of our last giveaway when we had Alex Red on. So I did get your stuff out today. Apologize it took me so long to get it out. But appreciate you for tuning in tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and enter you into the drawing. So who knows? You just may win some more stuff here. Okay. Got a bunch of comments tonight. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate all the comments here. A lot of people are just showing up to say what's up and show their support. Appreciate it. Even got a new sub here. Paul Casper, appreciate you, man. A lot of these guys you probably know, and some of these guys you may be meeting for the first time. Now, there's a couple comments here that I'm just kind of buzzing through here, but a couple of them were mentioning dirtier water. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what's your tips for those dirty water guys?
Man, that's really mostly all I fish. Our water's actually clearer this year than I've seen it in a long time because we haven't had the rain that we need, and the water is extremely low. I don't let the muddy water slow me down because that's my norm, So I go out and I fish glides. When I go out, I'm going to have a glide bait tied on one rod. I'm going to have a soft bait that I can get down on the bottom tied on one rod. And I'm usually going to have a multi-joint swimmer tied on a rod. To me, the importance of fishing any water and not to discredit the question, I just really don't know how to answer it because that's all I
Yeah.
fish, muddy water. That's my norm. So
Sure.
for me, it's about covering the top, middle, and bottom of the water column. You know, if I can throw a wake bait or a walking bait, a lot of times I'll opt for, instead of a wake bait, you know, depending on the conditions. I love throwing a big walking bait. That's a lunker punker by Black Dog.
Yeah.
I just try to cover that top, middle, and bottom. You know, once you kind of know where those fish are or where they should be on the spots in the lake, it's just about figuring out, you know, that right part in the water column for that given day and that given situation. And I wouldn't let muddy water keep me from throwing anything. I really wouldn't. Like I said, I thought most of my big fish on glide baits have come in muddy water.
Okay.
Multi-joint swimmers I've caught in muddy water. I catch them on soft baits, slow rolling them, just where you can just barely, they find it. I mean, those bass, those big bass, they're super sensitive to anything that's in their area, I feel like, you know, especially if they're feeding, you know, they're super sensitive to it.
So what I'm hearing for the dirty water guys is don't overthink it. You know, don't put a whole lot of thought. Well, the guys in California have got, you know, 10 foot of visibility or whatever. Like, you know, yeah, some of that may play into it, but the fish in muddy water are eating too, right? And that
The biggest difference that I'll make if our water is a little more stained than normal is I might throw a blade on the bottom of a soft bait, rig it onto the bottom of a beast hook to where when I'm skipping it off the bottom or swimming just above the bottom, it's got a little flash. Or I might throw, you can take worm rattles and stuff in the tail of a soft bait, you know?
yeah.
To where it's just got a little bit of a tick to it when that tail goes back and forth. That's about the biggest adjustments you're going to see me make as far as baits. If our water is just super muddy, if we've had a lot of rain or the wind's tossing things around and it's muddier than normal, I might make some little adjustments like that. But I'm going to throw the same baits regardless. Now, I might throw it if I have it in a color that's a little bit more visible in that super stained water. You know, I don't do a lot of bright colors. I try to keep it natural as far as, like, I don't do, like, you know, purple, you know, bright purples and oranges and yellows a lot. But I might switch, you know, from throwing a bait this color. So if we've had a lot of wind and rain the last couple of days and I'm going out, you know, I may try to throw something that's going to show up a little bit better. Or like I painted the head turner, you know, something that's just look still kind of natural, but a little bit more visible maybe. But at the end of the day, man, I think those big fish, they know those baits are there. They don't have to be able to see it. I think it helps them key in on it maybe and get their mouths on it a little bit better. But my fishing doesn't change that much. And we're not fishing super clear water either, so that may be a factor.
Yeah. I think we'll do one more question before we do our giveaway. You did mention making some mods on a soft bait. What is your favorite soft bait?
My favorite soft bait is the Battleship. That's made by Mike Gilbert, Working Class Zero. Comes in a 7.5 and a 9. This is the 9. It's got the head case harness, which is the newer version. They used to be kind of bad about the noses blowing out when a fish would get their mouth around it. You said it would rip the nose out. Best I can tell, that problem has been completely resolved so far with the baits that I've had with the head case harness. I don't get a ton of bites on this bait. Like, I can throw the Citizen and I'll get more bites. It's another bait by him. The reason I throw these is because we don't have a lot of rock in our lakes. What we've got is brush piles and just junk. You know what I'm saying? And these baits are about as weedless as it's going to get. And another reason that I really like them is because a lot of baits that are rigged on a beast hook, the hook hangs way down below the stomach here. And I'm not sure the fish care. I've seen some big fish caught on those baits, but I'm an overthinker, and I really like the way that bait is built is designed around that particular hook, so it hides right up, tucked up under the belly there. Now, with a weedless bait like that, you got to really, when you get a bite, you got to crank down fast. You got to really. It's not like swinging on a treble hook fish. You got to shake the boat when you set the hook. But that's my favorite bait to throw as far as soft baits. If I'm in a big fish area, I'm going to be throwing that battle shad, either a 7.5 or a 9.0 most of the time. I've got some other ones I throw. If you want to start out with a cheap soft bait, Jinko booty shaker. I've caught some really good fish on a Jinko booty shaker. They're cheap.
There you go. Heck yeah. Okay, so we have 21 people. We've got lots of comments, but I've got 21 people here that are going to be entered into the drawing. If you've got a comment over there, you are being entered into the drawing. So, Paul, yes, you are in. I'm going to go ahead and I just want to do one last look here to make sure I didn't forget anybody. I've got everybody over here that commented. Hold on. What about? Nope. Got him. Okay. Yep. Got him. Got her. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead. All right. Which one should we give away first?
Let's do the head turner. That was the guy that I reached out to before I realized that F5 was going to do what they were going to do. I had reached out to Brock. I've been working with him. That's a really great little bait. Somebody's going to have themselves a nice little glide bait.
Heck yeah. Yep. So you guys saw there, he's got one. And you will get to pick the paint scheme out on this one as well. So this bait has not been painted yet. So whoever's name I'm getting ready to call here will actually get to pick that out. So I'm going to go ahead and generate a number between 1 and 21. And that number is 19, which goes to Mr. Paul Casper, who just had, if he was in the drawing, and actually the comment's still up on the screen. So that's pretty wild.
That's awesome.
Yes, Paul, you are in the drawing. In fact, you won it. So shoot us some info if you would. Get with me. Just holler at me or holler at Jason. I don't know. Holler at Slay Baits, but
you could just have him pass the information to you if you want. You could pass it off to me and I'll get it to Brock.
There we go. So if you're not already friends with me on Facebook, I'm at John Morse, JONMORSE on Facebook. I'm sure there's a way to reach out to me on YouTube. But yeah, just give me your info and I'll get you with Brock and we'll get you set up. You'll figure out what paint scheme you want to do.
And thanks to Brock for doing that. That was very generous of him.
Very cool.
Congratulations, Paul. It's a great little glide bait.
And you guys, if you didn't win, the Slay Baits, if you didn't win the F5 stuff, just pay attention to these companies that are doing stuff like this. If you're looking to go buy a glide bait, if you're looking to go buy a rod, and you see that companies are doing these sort of things, they're investing in the community. They're investing in the anglers, right? So by doing this giveaway, they're helping me get some more people on the channel. They're introducing people to my stuff. So just like when we're doing tournaments, at the club level and stuff, I always say, make sure if you guys are looking to spend some money on some tackle or whatever it may be, look at those companies that are sponsoring the clubs and stuff like that. So this is another opportunity. Just because you didn't win tonight, when it comes time to get you a new glide bait, give those guys a look. And I'll say the same thing about F5, which we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw another number here. And you're going to win not only a rod, it's going to be the Ghost Code 760, but you're going to win a rod sleeve, a bait wrap, and a hat. So you've got 4 prizes getting ready to go to this next person that I'm getting ready to draw. And let's see. Jose wants a head turner. Brock, hook him up. There we go. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That is awesome. I love to see that. And Brock didn't give this away with the expectation that he was going to get a sale right here on the live feed, right? And so
Brock's a super good guy. He's got some more great baits coming down the line. So if you don't like Slave Baits page, go like Slave Baits page. He's gonna put some baits out there that are gonna get hard to come by pretty quick, I think.
Heck yeah. So that's best case scenario in my book. That's awesome. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to pick another one. We're going to go 1 to 21. We landed on 17, which is Daniel Creeder.
All right.
Daniel, where are you at? Let me go find your comment. There you go. I don't think we even answered his, did we? Or he had.
I don't think so. And he said he had to vamp a while ago. I seen where he said he had to jet out, but you can get in touch with him, or I will. I'm friends with him on Facebook. So.
Are you? Good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Daniel, just make sure we get your info. We'll get you the F5 prize pack out. And same thing. If you guys are looking for a new swim bait rod, they come highly recommended not only by Jason but by tons of other guys as well. I know Brennan Banks is throwing one. I know Edwin loves to throw them. I think Dusty was saying that he throws them around a little bit. So pretty popular options out there in the swim.
Those are phenomenal rods, guys. If you don't own an F5, consider them, because that's honestly, it's a huge part of my confidence on the water. Is I know my gear is gonna pass the test, and I use F5s across the board. It's the only rods I own. I'm not sponsored by them. Brad is a fantastic guy, and he makes a fantastic product. I appreciate him donating that prize pack tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, hit me up on Facebook, John, Jon Morse, Morse. Or on here somehow, maybe comment on the video or something, and we'll get in touch. But yeah, you can get me on Facebook. Guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate all of you guys tuning in tonight. I'm sure we'll have some more swim bait content coming up soon. And really kind of cool that Jason came on tonight, because he was kind of the inspiration, whether you realized it or not. He was the inspiration behind getting more swim bait content on here. So,
John, I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed it. And
sure.
If there's anything that I can do to help you or any of the guys that came in tonight, questions or anything, just hit me up anytime on Facebook, Instagram, drop a comment on YouTube, wherever. I'll find it and get back with you.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. And we'll be looking for some more PBs coming before the lakes freeze over for you.
I appreciate it, brother.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, guys, that's it. We've got 2 winners. Sleigh Baits gave away that head turner. So shout out to Paul on winning that, and Daniel on winning the F5 prize pack. So pretty sweet deal that they were willing to donate that gear to you guys, and awesome that they're supporting Jason and his hunt for chasing those trophy bass. So hopefully you guys learned something tonight. Hopefully you guys got a new perspective. Hopefully you dirty water guys are realizing that you can also target these big bass with these big, natural, realistic swim baits. I know a lot of people, just from the comments tonight even, are a little bit leery about doing that. So something that Jason has proved to be able to be successful at. So guys, I just want to thank you guys for supporting the channel. This has been a really cool opportunity for me to just learn a little bit more, meet some new people along the way. And we've been able to team up with some cool companies. And even in a roundabout way, I have, somewhat of an allegiance as well to these companies like Sleigh Baits and F5. I have no personal connection with them, but I really do appreciate when companies come through and they support something that we're all passionate about. So we kind of touched on that earlier. I feel the need to share my passion with all of you guys, and for a company to invest their time and their money and their energy into helping me spread that word. That's a really awesome thing. But not only that, even if it's they're supporting a completely other club in another state, I think, if you see that they're doing that, they're actually investing back into that community, whether it's your community or not. I think that's something that can help me make a decision on where I'm going to spend my money. So I would urge you guys to do the same thing. Make sure you guys check out Jason on YouTube as well. Like he was saying, he does have some cast to catch videos. And in fact, before I go, I meant to do this earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and actually play his cast to catch on his PB 10 pounder. So I'm going to do that right now before. So here it is. For you guys that are listening to the audio version of this, I apologize. There it is, right at the kayak.
Got it. That's a freaking giant.
That's
son.
on the ST36.
That is a freaking giant.
As he touched on, the one is the big part of that. But like he said, fit it right at the boat.
Woo!
10 pounder.
I got to get to some land somewhere, Bo. Here's tournament number 1. Chia pet. Fish's mouth.
Look at that thing.
Zeros.
Big old head on that thing.
Can 1.
There you go.
10 pounds, 1 ounce.
There it is, guys. I just want to thank you guys all for tuning in. Do me a favor, if you haven't hit subscribe already, do that for me. And we'll see you guys on the next one.